July 14th, 2021 meeting of the Leavenworth Rotary Club to order. We'll first have the national anthem and then an invocation by Carolyn Webster and a song by Carl.
Bless our actions of service and bless all who are in our thoughts and prayers. It is in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, we're going to be singing song number 5, America, page 9, first and fourth verses. America. America. Song number 5.
Not America, it's Marco. First and gosh.
Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Our fathers God to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright, with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God our King.
Okay, guest of Rotarian.
Yes, Sherry, you have a guest?
I actually have 2 guests, Jerry Parscale, my speaker for today, and I'll do a formal introduction of her in a little bit. And Cindy Webb King is my guest today. Brian couldn't be here, he's TDY, and Cindy is how I met Jerry. But dear friend, they're dear friends of ours. So anyway, thanks for coming. Welcome.
We just got a guest?
My husband Bo, we're going to be for lunch today.
Okay, then it looks like the next thing, I would like Ron Booth to come up here, please. Actually, what we're doing with Ron today is honoring him for 40 years of service to Rotary. And do you have any Thank you so much for all you do for Rotary.
Thank you.
Past president
everyone.
and
So
everything.
it's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you. Those are always the fun recognitions that we get to share. I also wanted to mention that Brett is, actually this is his last Rotary meeting with us because he's moving out of the area. And I want to thank you too, Brett, for everything you've done for our club, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank
It's what you have done for us as well.
Okay, next up are Paul Harris presentations, so I will turn this over to DeEtte.
We have quite a few Paul Harris Fellow recognitions today. I will tell you before I hand out these pins, if anyone thinks that they are short a pin, that they need a +1 or a +2 or something, please let me know. I can get those for you. Things have been a little discombobulated for the last 12 or 14 months or something, and so some went someplace, some went another. So if you don't think you have everything you need, let me know. Okay? So we'll start with.
I don't want to use it. And I don't want to take any pictures, so Sherry, you can be in the pictures. The first one is Tom Dials. And this is a Paul Harris Fellow +1 that represents $2,000 of giving to the Rotary Foundation.
Picture.
Should we have them all stay up there and get one big picture?
That would be great.
Okay.
Rick Burns. I have a Paul Harris Fellow +1 for you, which represents $2,000 of giving to the Rotary Foundation. I'm going to say this last one for a minute. Oh, sorry. This one is for Rick Hansen, Paul Harris Fellow +1.
Yay.
Which represents $3,000. He said it's +2, so it's $3,000 worth of giving to the Rotary Foundation. Okay, and we have several Paul Harris Fellows to give. And the first one, this is a kind of a quiet guy. John Donovan always says he's come from the Paul Harris Ferry, right? Because some folks don't want to be recognized when they give these. So the first Paul Harris Fellow that's being awarded today is to Tony Martins. Okay, the next one is for, not that one, sorry, wrong one. Reverend David Garber. And this one is for Marcia Irvine. And if Pat Proctor would come up here, please. He's not getting anything tonight.
It's just awarded.
Just want to make them walk.
Hey, really quickly, during the pandemic, with all the shutdowns and folks out of work, there were just so many people that were in dire straits. People that had been paying the bills every day, and then all of a sudden they weren't getting a paycheck, and they didn't know how they were going to feed their families, how they were going to take care of their families. And across the city, all the different organizations that like the Catholic Charities, the Salvation Army, all the different organizations that provide help every day, all of a sudden had orders of magnitude more to do. And during the pandemic, as much as any other organization, the Salvation Army really stepped up and took care of folks. So I had the opportunity to give a Paul Harris Fellow, and I wanted to recognize Brett Dietrich before he gets out of here. Take it to your next Rotary Club.
I was telling them, I met somebody in the Wichita Rotary Club at IHOP the other day. There you go.
All right.
Okay, I also have here for Don Weston.
Oh, I gotta go get, no.
This is a Paul Harris Fellow Plus One, okay, which represents $2,000 worth of giving. Stan Cherry.
Where's the other people?
And this is the Paul Harris Fellow Plus One, which represents $2,000 worth of giving to the Rotary Foundation. Yes. Like you're running. Okay. Larry Turgeon.
You haven't suffered in that
Larry Turgeon is Paul Harris Fellow Plus Two, which represents $3,000 worth of giving to the Rotary Foundation.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Larry Turgeon. I'm presenting my opportunity, or my Paul Harris Fellow to I thought to a deserving individual. Should have been given a long time ago, but because of what was going on in the world and in the United States, we had to postpone this. So we got both of us in the room now, so I'd like to have Mike Griswold come up, please.
And that's all for today, except for the picture. Okay, everybody? Look good?
Make them squeeze together.
Okay, squeeze together, please.
Yeah. Oh, Tom,
Squeeze together. Mike, come in.
maybe every other one?
Come in
The
together.
president? Yes.
You gotta do this in video, Mike.
No, I'm not doing this
Panoramic.
video. Okay, I've got y'all. Good. Right there. Everybody look at me. Smile. Say cheese. Hold on. I'm going to take individuals to get closer. Okay, thank you.
Congratulations to you all. That's wonderful. Okay, next we're moving on to announcements.
That was the one.
The first thing that I wanted to mention was last evening, the Rotary Board meeting was held, and I want to reassure you there is so much enthusiasm in the room. We're all so excited about our Rotary year. The meeting actually lasted 2 hours. Hopefully they won't all last that long, but we had so much good conversation, and it was just a good time to get everybody back together, all together, and do some planning. So, wanted to give a shout out to Doug Tysted because he has agreed to work with Tom Dials and transition to the admin role, the administration role. So, yes, you did. Yay, Rob. Thank you so much for doing that. There are still other opportunities to serve in our club, so as I mentioned last week, so please keep those in mind and let me know if you're interested. We will probably also be calling on you. We also discussed last evening the lunches and the charging for the lunches. The decision has been made that now that we are back to weekly meetings, we will also charge weekly for the luncheons as we did during pre-pandemic times. I know that you can't always make it to a meeting. I myself cannot, but please know that your lunches also help pay for other expenses in the club. They also make some of our service projects doable. So it's not in waste, and it's something that we need to do again. With the absence of another fundraiser to replace that, we will go back to the weekly charging of lunches. And that will begin July 1st. The other thing that we're going to do, if you do have any particular dietary restrictions, please let us know what those are, because Terry's group can work with that. Dawn has volunteered to take any of those requests via email, and Carl's going to speak to that too a little bit about how soon the lunch group needs to know that information. We will also end our Zoom meetings after today's meeting. What we're going to do is go back to recording them like we did before, where Tamara set up a video and recorded the meeting, and then you can use it as a makeup. But there is an expense involved with Zoom, and we're trying to be, responsible fiscally there and not use that expense. Survey. Just a reminder, there are surveys on the table. A few of them, I should have made a few more copies, but thank you for all who have turned them in. I've received over 20 surveys back already, which I think is great. But that's your opportunity to give your suggestions, your input on certain things to do with the club. And we definitely want that. Okay, so that's all I have for announcements. The first announcement I have on my sheet is Carl.
All right, regarding meals, certain things, if you need a special meal, no tomatoes, or gluten-free, or low cholesterol, or some other dietary requirements, Terry needs a week in advance notice, so they can provide it. I told them that I had a vegetable intolerance, and pork and cookies are fine. So, but a week in advance.
Okay, Pat, you're up next.
Good afternoon, folks. The local chapter of the Association United States Army, Henry Leavenworth chapter, is having a breakfast. We're getting back to our monthly breakfast. The next breakfast is on the 29th of this month, in a couple weeks. It's at 7 a.m. and it's at June's Northland. It's $13 you can pay at the door. You don't have to pay in advance or RSVP to show up. And the guest speaker will be General Retired Formica, who's now the Deputy Commander up at Fort Leavenworth. So it should be a really interesting conversation. And we've already got a ton of RSVPs, so it should be a pretty well-attended event. And then second, we've got AUSA has a fundraiser golf tournament coming up on August 20th. If you're interested in either sponsoring or having a team or just playing individually, come talk to me afterwards and I'll get you all the information that you need in order to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mike.
The bills are out. That's all I want to say, but I want to give this opportunity to. I have this many people show up in a long, long time. So thank you and thank you all for paying the bills on time. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Okay. Then Tony Kramer.
Okay, Saturday, the 24th, we're looking at park cleanup again, 10th Avenue, 8 o'clock. I'll have sign-up sheets next week, get an idea of how many people might show up, so it'll help me plan more projects. at least trash pickup and flower bed cleanup.
Okay, great. And last announcement, Caroline.
I have a roster of the house around anyone that might be going to race for the day. Do you mind signing that?
Okay.
Sign up the prayer. To do the prayer.
That is all I have on my list for announcements. Am I missing anybody? Okay, well, it is at 12:30. My goal is to try and start the program at 12:30, so I'll allow enough time for the speaker. We have some really, sorry, I have to back up. Pot drawing, thank you.
Sherry didn't mention that our Rotary board meeting was held at the bar.
That's why so many decisions were made, huh?
All right, we have a chance for somebody to win $10 and with a maximum of 345. So you're gonna make a friend. And about 35.
And about 35 enemies, so. All right. This.
Okay. And the last three are 219.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Looks like he had fun.
Okay, I'll get better at this routine. All right, so on to our speaker for today.
That's when you get figured out.
I would like to introduce to you Jerry Parscale. She has spent 33 years in education and has worked as a classroom teacher, principal, professional development director, and deputy superintendent of Fort Leavenworth Schools, USD 207. Her mode of operation was always the same, learning for all kids. She is here to speak with us today about a very special child, her son Nicholas, and his message is one of strength, hope, and positivity.
Don't you start.
I wasn't going to do that, I'm sorry. Yes. Please welcome Jerry.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you how honored I am to be here to talk to you about somebody in my life who is very, very special, my son Nicholas. And I want to thank Sherry, President Sherry, for inviting me and being allowed to talk to you and tell you a little bit about his story and about his legacy. Nicholas was often referred to as an old soul. And I think that as you hear his story, you'll understand why. When Nicholas was born, we lived in a small town called Troy, Kansas, which is in the northeast. I see some people shaking their heads. Hot spot of the Midwest, let me tell you. I grew up there, moved away, came back with my family, and Nicholas was born while we were living in Troy. And we lived in the country, so there wasn't a lot of opportunity for him to play with other kids because there weren't a lot of kids around us that were his age. And so he never had trouble, though, making friends and always had a smile on his face. And he made one friend for life, and that was Miss Smith. And Miss Smith lived just away. She was our neighbor, actually. And from the time that he could run, I remember him running across our driveway through her extensive garden and to her house. And he would sit with Miss Smith, who at that time was probably in her mid to late 80s, and he would talk for hours with her. They would sit in the kitchen or they would sit on her porch and eat orange slices. And I think him being an old soul started at that point, because Nicholas was not just looking at life through the lens of a child. he was looking at life through the lens of Miss Smith and all of her experiences and all of her trials and tribulations through life. And I really think that that started making him who he was. He was nicknamed Nick the Brave by some of the nurses that he was in contact with through his life, and you'll see why, I think, as I tell you his story. In 2016, you can go ahead. In 2016, and do one more. In 2014, we moved to Lawrence, Kansas. And he had a pretty typical childhood. And he had second and third grade at the Lawrence Public School System. He liked to play outside. He liked to play with computers and video games. He liked to bother his older brother. He was just a normal child. And then in 2016, our lives changed. We were on a family vacation to Florida and in July, and Nicholas was complaining of severe headaches and nausea. And we came back from vacation, and after a day of rest, I took him into our family physician, and he treated him for migraines. And he said, but if he's not better by tomorrow, bring him back. And so I did, and he at that point sent us on to Lawrence Memorial Hospital, where they ran a CT scan. And that CT scan showed that he had fluid on his brain. And so they sent us on to Children's Mercy, and at Children's Mercy they ran a series of MRIs, and they told us that evening that Nicholas had an inoperable brain tumor. And if you had asked Nicholas, he would have told you, okay, go like this, and go like this, and go like this, and it's right in the middle of my head. And the tumor itself was covering the pineal gland. They called the tumor a pineoblastoma. It was covering the pineal gland, which is the gland that is responsible for routing your spinal fluid through your brain and back around. And so that was the reason for the pressure and the reason for the pain. And so the following morning, they did brain surgery and rerouted the fluid on Nicholas's brain, and the pain subsided. But little did we know, I think at that point, the road, nearly 5 years that Nicholas would have in front of him. I think that all of us believe that our children are special, right? All of us who have children, grandchildren, you know, we think that our kids are the most special in the world, and of course I thought Nicholas was special, but I don't think I realized how special until very early in his diagnosis. He was actually taking a bath, and I was sitting talking with him, and he said, you know, Mom, I think I know why God gave me cancer. And I said, well, why? And he said, God gave me cancer so that another little kid wouldn't have to have it. He said, I don't think God knew if another little kid could handle it, but he knows that I can, and so that's why God gave me cancer. And you know, of course, that hits you as a mom, you know, right in the heart. And I think I realized that here's this 10-year-old little boy who has conceptualized this horrible disease and is going to use it for good, and that's exactly what he did. Nicholas's philosophy throughout his life was all about making people happy, all about lightening people's load. And if he could think of one thing every day to make somebody else happy, that's exactly what he did. If you want to go on. So I want to share 3 things that Nicholas did. I have countless examples, but I want to share 3. One of which was just pretty simple, and 2 of which were a little bit bigger. Nicholas's course of treatment for his cancer was extensive. He went through rounds and rounds and rounds of chemotherapy and rounds and rounds and rounds of radiation. And when you go in to receive chemotherapy, and Nicholas was a constant figure at Children's Mercy, when you check in, children are given a gold coin. And then after their chemotherapy, they can use that gold coin to put in a vending machine out in their lobby. And the vending machine has bouncy balls and trinkets, stickers, little necklaces, things kids like. And going to chemotherapy was tough. And it wasn't so much tough for Nicholas because of what he had to endure, but there are other children along the ward that are also receiving chemotherapy, and they weren't handling it quite as well as Nicholas. And they would cry, or they would complain, and this hurt Nicholas a lot. He didn't want to see anybody unhappy. So what he chose to do is take his gold coin every day, and mind you, 5 days a week for weeks on end, he would get a gold coin, and he chose to give his gold coin to another little one who was on the clinic floor, so that that could be a happy moment for them. And I'll never forget the times he would come back and he would just have a smile on his face, and he would just radiate and say, "Mom, I made their day. They were so happy because I gave them my coin so that they could get 2 prizes." That was Nicholas's mode of operation, is to spread the positive and to make other people happy. If he could lighten someone's load, if he could bring a smile to someone's face, that was his role. Now, mind you, this kid was 10, 11, 12, 13. These are years that we don't see a lot of kids all that happy, right? And here was this child making a difference in everyone's life. I told you that, if you'll go 2, I told you that there are 2 things, one more please. There were 2 big things that Nicholas did in his life to promote positivity and to help others. And the first one was a podcast. He wanted people to hear from other people who were spreading positivity, who were happy about life, loving life, and going out there and doing good works. And so Nicholas created the Nicholas the Brave Chemo, Kitties, and Canines podcast. And the Chemo, Kitties, and Canines part comes from Nicholas's love of animals. We have 4 dogs and 2 cats in our house in Lawrence, so it was Animal House at our house. We would have had more, but we had to say no. But Nicholas had a vision that someday he would partner with animal shelters and with kids who were just starting their chemotherapy. And he would be able to give an animal from the shelter to a child who was suffering so that they would always have a friend. And that was his vision, hence the name of the podcast. And he interviewed many people through the year-plus run of his podcast. He interviewed Brian Haney, who's the voice of the Jayhawks. He interviewed Wendy McClendon-Covey, who is on the television show The Goldbergs. He interviewed Mike Griswold. I didn't know you were going to be here. I really didn't. And he interviewed Jen Carroll, who was from Top Chef fame. He interviewed Mike Brown, who's a former NBA star with the Utah Jazz. And he interviewed numerous educators, entrepreneurs, and motivational speakers. And one more, please. He had 2 very special guests. Paul Rudd, who is, of course, an actor, is from the Kansas City area and does some wonderful charitable work for Children's Mercy Hospital. And he interviewed Coach Bill Self, who's the coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. And what I wanted to be able to do is I wanted to share with you just the very end of one of Nicholas's podcasts, 3038, I think. And the reason that I'd like you to hear it is I want you to hear the reaction that Paul had to Nicholas, because This just happened everywhere he went. So I'll just go ahead and stop talking, and you can go ahead and just listen for just 1 minute.
I've seen him before in many things. He was in Elf, and he was in what we call the Station Age, and he's been in a lot of stuff. But his brother is a violinist, and he also happens to be one of the funniest people that I've ever met. And he is one of the most positive people that I've met. Every single time I've talked to him.
As he's getting to the part that I want you to listen to, he's talking about people who can be on Nicholas's podcast in the future.
He laughs a lot. And he's very funny. So he plays violin. He played the violin on Hamilton. He was in the, he originated that show. And so every time, if you look, incredibly positive person. I think he'd be a really good person to talk to.
Thank you for being on. Yeah, Paul, you're a really great guy. I really appreciate you being a positive force for me and other people in the world. And thank you for being on the part of Nick the Brave, Chemo Keys, and Canaan podcast. Thank you.
Well, Nick, I want to say thank you, and thank you, one, for doing this podcast, because it's an amazing, awesome thing. But two, I want to thank you for being a positive person, but more than that, thank you for being my friend, and for being an inspiration to me and to so many people about how we should look at life and what we can do and accomplish. It's incredible. Thank you.
Don't sign off the video because
it's because his mother wanted to talk to him too.
So we can both.
All right. So that's the way that people responded to Nicholas. His smile, his positivity, and his want to be able to make people happy. I mentioned, you can go to the next slide. I mentioned chemotherapy. One of the things that you're given when your child is diagnosed with cancer is you are given a large 3-ring binder with lots of scary information in it. It has the diagnosis and everything about it. It has the drugs listed. It has the schedule. All of the information, albeit important, is rather scary. And it always bothered Nicholas that the kids didn't get anything, because really the binder was more for the families and the parents. And so he always wondered, why don't we get anything? Because kids need something too. And so what Nicholas did was he authored the book, What I Wish I Knew Before Cancer. Because he thought, if I can help kids, if I can let them know when they get their cancer diagnosis what is in front of them and how to deal with it, he wanted to make sure that he could do that. So he authored the book, What I Wish I Knew Before Cancer. He doesn't pull any punches. He tells it like it is. He talks about the needles and the side effects and the way people will look at you when you have a bald head and the things that will happen to you and all the good things that will happen to you as well. But he wanted to be able to give kids a roadmap. And I think that that's what happens in that book. You can go to the next slide. I will tell you that on a Wednesday, Coach Self was the last podcast interview Nicholas taped. And he was able to make a fast friend in Coach Bill Self, and Coach visited him many times at our home after. They became instant friends. And that day also, Nicholas had the privilege of being able to talk to the teachers at Eisenhower Elementary on Fort Leavenworth. Cindy Webking, thank you for being here, the principal. And that was on a Wednesday, and on that Friday, Nicholas took a turn for the worse. and we learned that the round of chemotherapy, the experimental drug that he was on at that time, was no longer working. And so that Saturday, he entered hospice. He did rebound. He regained some of the use of his legs and continued his podcast as best he could. But the bottom line is it had taken too much. And even though he rallied, in late April, he took his final turn for the worse, and Nicholas passed away on June 15th, of this year. So almost a month ago. But what we have, and what Sherry had asked me to talk to you about, was his legacy. I know that Nicholas would want me to say a lot of things. Actually, Nicholas wouldn't want me to say anything. He would want to be talking right now. But I know that what we wanted to do today is to share his mission and to share his positivity with others. And one more slide, I think. 2 more slides. Oh, no. I want to show you, this was from an Instagram post. We got hundreds of condolences and on Facebook and Instagram. But this one, I thought, best tells Nicholas's legacy. And it's a gentleman I've never met, who I don't know, but he wrote, "I never knew Nick, but I stumbled upon his profile from following Wendy McClendon Covey. I started following after seeing the enormous grace and positivity that Nicholas seemed to show, even in the face of something like cancer. I often found myself checking in to see how he was doing and routinely rooting for him. There was something about him that I believe gave others hope, even those who never knew him. Your son has helped me, a grown man in his 30s, become a better person, and I'll always be truly grateful." Next slide, please. We have a saying now, be like Nick. And when we say be like Nick, what we want you to do is love life. Continue your good works and hug your kids, hug your grandkids, hug your family, tell them that you love them every day. And Nicholas's philosophy is, if you can look at the positive side of life, it's going to be much, much easier. So please, as I end, be like Nick, be happy, love life, and have a good day. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for this wonderful presentation. And I must say, I'm a better person because of Nick. And I really appreciate it. I have something.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful program. So, guess that is in there now. Let's all stay. Jerry did have the book she showed you. I have one of these books and I read it, and it is just an awesome book. And like she says, he wanted to put out the message that how he could help kids. They didn't have anything to refer to, and it really does, I think, help the kids tremendously. So if you are interested in a book, please see Jerry. She also has bracelets for Nick the Brave, bracelets if you're interested in one of those. Okay. All right, is there anything else that alibis? Okay, let's stand for the four-way,
I'm going to be sending a note out, reference our veterans banner. It's that time of year again when we start looking at some of our veterans to replace Diet on the veterans banner. So look for a note from me on Club Runner.
replace Deanne.
Yeah, we can't really replace Diet. You're right. You're right. I just meant her banner.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's stand for the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first.
Is it true?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it be beneficial?
And fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Good luck, right? When you move or leave?
August